Hey guys, how's it going? This is Dave, and welcome to episode 3 of Adobe Character Animator Live. And today we're going to be going over quite a few things. How to do a live streaming thing like this, where your character's face shows up and you can talk and do kind of fun stuff like this. It's always fun to do. So I'll show you a little bit of how to do that in a little bit. And just a bunch of other things. Some great art that was sent in by some community members. We'll go over how to change costumes, how to bring in some 3D artwork and bring it into Character Animator, and a few other things like that. So there's going to be a lot of cool stuff. So anyway, let's... oh, good, Lynne's here. Hey, Lynne, how's it going? I see you in the chat. Thanks to everyone for joining us in the chat today at twitch.tv/oksamurai. All right, so I'm going to switch to here, and you'll see that I had this character set up, this guy here, and I've kind of tweaked a lot of the values over here to make the face value come down a little bit and the parallax way up. And so because of that, this guy has kind of his eyes and his nose are moving in kind of that parallax way, and so it kind of gives him a little subtle 2.5D look, which is kind of nice. One of the things I was doing when I started the show was I was just streaming just that window, of Character Animator. And so this is a way, if you wanted to do, a live event or something like that, you could have a character, talking and kind of have this interactive cartoon thing going. And the way I do that is through, the way that I'm doing this stream actually right now is through this free streaming software, which probably a lot of if you've ever done any streaming with Twitch or anything like that, you may have used. It's called OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, and that's I think you can get it for free at obsproject.com. And what that will do is allow you to do streaming and then also specify where your window is at any time. So this is going to get. Let's see. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And his eyes are going all over the place because I'm looking at the wrong camera. But what I've done is basically specified an area of the screen, and this is what I kind of want to fill up the full, the full area. And if I go to the full scene, this is going to get a little bit trippy probably, but let's look at it anyway. So you see I have my OBS software down here. I'll just switch to the camera so it's a little bit easier. And so what you see is you have these different, variations of what you can choose. And one of those is the ability to specify an area of a screen. So I could, select my display input, select what camera I want, and then just, select this region of the screen and then push that out to other people, whether it's Twitch or whatever. So it's a pretty cool way to do this sort of interactive cartoon thing if you wanted to do a YouTube, stream or, anything on Twitch or anything like that. Of course, you could even make it just your little avatar, in the corner if you were doing a gaming stream or something like that. So OBS is a pretty flexible app and has a lot of different things that you can do with it. So it's pretty cool and just a fun option if you want to do this sort of thing. We're working on some stuff that'll make this easier in the future, other solutions, but for now this is kind of a one way to do it if you're interested in that sort of thing. So I thought that was cool. A lot of people ask about that. We get a lot of comments about a lot of questions in email about that sort of thing. So let's see. Oh, I was showing the wrong thing that entire time, wasn't I? Because I went to the camera. There we go. Sorry. Okay. That's what I meant to show. And it's not going to show up very well, but you get the picture. There's the scene down here, and I can change the display and all that stuff. So that could have been done better. Sorry about that, but you get the idea. All right. So let's move on to an actual character. So this guy dude, he's been a stock character in the project files for a while, and there's a bunch of cool things that I've started to add to him, and that's using little pieces of cycle layers animation to bring a little bit of extra expressiveness. So one of the things I was showing the other week was the ability to kind of use cycle layers to do these angry eyebrows or worried eyebrows, right? And so you just do a couple of frames of animation, and you can kind of get, the worried eyebrows or angry eyebrows, and make it look like, you know, there's 2 or 3 frames of animation in between to make that feel a little bit smoother. So just as a recap, what I've done there, and you'll take a look at the guy here a little bit closer. In the puppet panel, so when you double click on one of these guys, so let's say, dude, the little guy with the marionette icon over here, that's what I'm working on right now. That's going to show me kind of the makeup of this character. And when I look at all these little, what's these little, like, you know, blocks and the number letters and all that stuff, all that means is the first column is the number of handles your character has. So you know, any handles, any of these little circle or dot or informational data points that you've added, that's where that stuff's going to show up. And so it'll show you how many handles you might have in any given you know, layer. And then here, this little block icon here, that just means if you have a behavior associated with it. So this gives me a quick way to understand if I have, you know, cycle layers associated with with one of these groups or layers, because I see the little block icon, I know that that's working. So that's kind of a nice overview of how to do that. And then this last one, this keyboard, this will tell me which keys I can press to do this sort of stuff. So as I, you know, press X or K or B or H, that will trigger certain things. And all that's doing is saying what key is triggered over here in the trigger category. And we can use triggers, as we showed last week, to do stuff like the cycle layers behavior, start when triggered, and it's saying, you know, basically when I touch the K key, that's going to trigger that. All right, so that's kind of a basic overview. And what I was doing with the eyebrow, so I had like the worried eyebrow, for example. All I did was check the cycle layers down here. I added cycle layers to it, and this is just, I think, actually this is just two layers of the eyebrows, and all I did was add a cycle layer behavior to the top group that contains these and say, okay, when this is triggered, advance every 1 frame, do it once, go forward and reverse, and hold on the last layer. So that allows me to, when I press W, it's going to go up and do the worry thing, and then when I let go, it's going to go down. And so I think I've triggered all of these interactions pretty much the same way. So, you know, as I press W, it'll do that. If I press A, it'll do that. And then I started to get interested in the eyes and the mouth as well. So, you know, the X, for example, is doing this crazy thing to the eyes. And, you know, it kind of gives it a funny expression there. And then things are moving a little bit slower. I'm not sure why. Let's see. X does that, and then what was the mouth one? M does this. Ah! So all I'm doing is adding an extra cycle layers group within here, and it's kind of overtaking the eyes or the mouth of my character. And so I can, you know, I could press these as much as I want and do, you know, something crazy like that. So maybe his eyes are bugging out and he's going, whoa, or, you know, whoa, 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 something like that. So, you know, you can do kind of little fun expressive details on the face. And you could do a lot of, you know, little fun interactions like that. So how do we do this? Let's go in and just show an example. So the mouth, I had inside the mouth, inside that mouth group, I had another group which I called yell, and I made this added a cycle layers behavior to this, and basically this has a 4-layer structure of each of those mouths, and you're not going to see them because this is turned off, but I guess if I turned it on, you should be able to see it. There we go. And so you can kind of see each state of that cycle layers show up. So here's the biggest mouth, and here's the third biggest and second biggest. So I was just basically scaling this mouth down from, you know, normal size where the other mouths are, and then opening it up to a bigger size. So that's one way to do it. And then let me just turn all this stuff back on so we can see it. And I think I had this turned off. And then I just attached the cycle layers with the M key to that. And the one thing that you definitely want to do is hide siblings. So this little checkbox here, what that's going to say is, hey, everything else that's on the same level as this needs to disappear. So those are its siblings, and that stuff should disappear. So, you know, if you didn't do that, then this mouth would show up in addition to the other mouths, the other lip sync happening, and that's going to lead into some issues. So you want to use that. And the way to do that in the Photoshop file, if I just go over to Photoshop here, would be to add an exclamation mark after it. So let me find that mouth thing. Here we go. Did I do M for that? Yeah. So you just do an M in parentheses and this exclamation mark, and that will do the same thing. Okay, so back to Character Animator. So we saw how to kind of do that cool expressiveness, and then one thing I've liked to do is start to use these kind of use these mouse shapes, use these cycle layer mouse shapes for over exaggerated sounds, right? So that what was that? The M. So wow. So if I say wow normally with just the lip sync, it's going to look like this. Wow, wow, wow. And if I wanted to make that a little bit more expressive and kind of bump it up a little bit, then I can press the M key while I'm saying that. So wow, wow, wow. And, so you can play around with it. I could do a pass, where I just record the lip sync and then maybe I add these type of things over top of it. Listening for those parts where I might say something. No, that wasn't very good. But you get the idea. You can kind of play around with it. And because it's triggered, I can press it pretty quick and call it on command, which kind of adds to, this nice little fluid animation that's on demand anytime I want it. Which is, it's a fun little trick. So you can experiment with that with different wide mouth shapes. Go from small to big and back and so. I think I also did some eyelids with this guy. Yeah, if I press H, he does kind of this, whoa, dude, what's going on here? And then B, I think it's blink, so he could be singing this song. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Something like that. Like my Phil Collins impression. All right. So, just these little details, things like that. I mean, it seems small, but, that's animation is all about these kind of, the funny, exaggerated stuff, and particularly with the the eyes, you can do just such fun, cool stuff that really gets a fun expression out there. I think this guy too. Let me do the head tilt a little bit more back to 100 to show this other thing. So I had this knockout animation that I was working on too. I didn't quite finish it, but if I press K, I think he does that sort of thing, and I had the eyes and the mouth. Both triggering at the same time. So you can do that. If you want something to be triggered by the same key, it doesn't all have to be here. So I've knockout for the mouth, and that's shown by a K trigger there. But then you can also do it for down here. I've got it for the eye as well, and for this other eye. So you can have the same key trigger multiple things at once if you wanted, a bunch of different things to happen to your character. So there's a lot of, interesting stuff that's possible there. One thing I've noticed though, it's really apparent when you do a transition and one of these things and I press it. It's very clear that that's happening. I find it's and this is something as I've learned a little bit more about animation. I'm continuing to try to learn as I go. So this is kind of a work in progress, but it's best when you do that sort of thing with motion, right? So if this guy was getting knocked out, this doesn't look as good as something like that, where he gets, like that, gets knocked over. So anytime you're doing kind of these transitional states, it seems to work a little bit better when that stuff is happening, when there's a big motion associated with it as well. So, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do. Monica is saying that I see that my keyboard needs to be expanded. There aren't enough trigger keys. One thing to note, some people on the team have been experimenting with game controllers. So stuff like an Xbox One controller, for example. There are third-party applications that you can use, and we're still in the very early stages of this stuff, but you can use these sort of things to basically map to a to a controller. So if you wanted to press Y or B or A or R RT or that sort of stuff, or even pressing in the analog sticks. There's some really cool stuff that you can do with that. So you might be able to, if you memorized all this stuff into a game controller, that might be a little bit easier to control. So it's a work in progress. I think that's one potential way, but that may be something you should look into. We'll do an example of that in the future. I really honestly haven't had a chance to try it yet. I've just looked over the shoulder of people and seen that kind of stuff happening, which is cool. S Fold 85 is saying, can we do special moves like the Street Fighter combos, combine multiples into big one thing? Currently, as long, I think I understand the question correctly. Currently, I don't think you can have like one trigger another trigger, at least in the Preview 3 version. I think you would have to manually time those out. So you would have to do here's one to make him do this, Hadoken move or something like that. Hadoken! And then the fireball might be another one, for example. So maybe you have, this. So, H starts the Hadoken motion, or H does the Hadoken motion, and then F for fireball brings the fireball out or something like that. You could do that sort of thing. And then D does the dragon punch. I don't know, whatever sort of thing you want to do. So I fooled around with that. Like for the mouth thing here, I was thinking, how could I do a thing where I have him, do the mouth, do the transition up, and then have that mouth kind of wavy and going, and do another cycle layers animation. And I was fooling around with it, but I think the best way to probably do it would be to first start with the M and then transition, get your timing right to do, press W for wavy mouth or whatever at the right particular time. Now you can always do, there's the slow-mo recording feature down here, which changes your recording speed, which is a great asset for this sort of thing. So you could record a performance and then just record the keyboard trigger part, and then record at half speed or something like that, and go over top of it with recording recording those keys that you want at the right precise timing. Gal6 is asking, is lowercase a and uppercase A different? I don't think so, actually. It looks like M and capital M, Shift M are doing the same thing, so I don't believe so. I think it's just alphanumeric currently, so you can trigger it by the the number keys or the alphabet keys, and that should do it. I think that is correct. Okay, so cool. All right. Got a good chat today. Thanks for asking all these questions. I want to show another example of this. Let's see. Where's this monster guy? He's this guy. So I was working on a flatter version of the Ramirez character that you've probably seen in some of the tutorials. Apparently his vision has gotten better because he's not wearing glasses today. But this guy is kind of moving around, and I've got a little dangle on some hair associated with him, and I tried to just make him really simple and flat. I was really working on, don't worry about any shading, don't worry about going over the top with anything. And his lip sync isn't perfect either, because I've only added, I think, 5 or 6 mouths, so that's still a work in progress. So it's not looking as good as it could. But I've kind of got him moving around, and then I've tried to add some expressiveness to him, like I was doing with that dude character. So let's set the rest pose again, have him kind of move around, and then I started to do, I think I turned the blink off actually, so I think I went down to eyelid strength over here and changed that to 0, which is going to change, if the character has eyelids, that's going to get rid of basically them moving, and if it has a blink, it's going to get rid of that. And now he's just going to kind of, I can do these kind of manual blinks. And I did these two ones where I do C for kind of these happy eyes. And I have I think that's a 3-frame animation where there's blue going over the eyes and then it ends up like this. And then one where it's kind of, more like, oh, I'm impressed with myself, blah, 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 blah. Those kind of eyes. So you could do kind of these manual eye movements if you wanted to, and it really adds a lot of life to the character, I feel like. I'd love to, have 10 of these that I could trigger and kind of whatever sets the particular, mood at the time. What else did I do with this guy? B? Oh, yeah. B, and I think F does that. So if I do similar to what I was doing with that guy, the other guy. So just kind of crazy eyes, and that motion is there as well. A mouth getting a little bit bigger. What else did I do? S? Oh yeah, that went to small eyes. That was just kind of a weird experiment. I don't know exactly why I was doing that. And then W is a wide open mouth. Anyway, so you can start to see how all this stuff together could, add some personality to the character and make some cool stuff. I mean, this is really starting to feel like, like something pretty polished. It's looking pretty nice, and to be able to do this live is pretty cool. So I'm pretty excited with this sort of stuff, and I'm excited to add this to more of my characters. I think before a lot of my characters in the past have just had the pupils and not the big eyeballs. And as I've experimented more, I feel like I'm getting better results when I get the big eyebrows and kind of big expressions. Because once you start to add all this stuff in, you get some really interesting, fluidity and results from that. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful. In the chat, Redefinery, back to the Xbox controller thing, says, I've used Joy to Key on Windows to use an Xbox One controller to do key triggers. Press left trigger on controller to simulate the A key, for example. I believe there's a similar one for Mac. So there you go. Tested by Jeff on the team. So thanks for that. All right. So let's move into user creation. Better put some clothes on that guy. So this was sent in to us from a user from Italy, actually. Italo let me see. I'm going to totally mispronounce this name. Italo Draperi from Italy. And he was writing me back and forth because he and his fiance were working on this cartoon versions of themselves for a video for their wedding. And he wanted to create these cartoons and then do a video that they could put on their wedding website. And one of the things he really wanted to do was be able to switch between different costumes for his character. So we've got, this guy right here, and if I press the 2 key, he switches to this. 3, 4. That one's awesome. 5, 6, 7, 8. I think that's it. And so if I press 8 again, then he goes back to his naked state. So this is really cool. So I think he was able to, they were kind of telling their life story, how they met, all that stuff. And I don't know exactly, when this came into play or some of these other costumes, but he was able to, kind of on the fly as they was recording, go through these different costume choices. And it leads to a really cool experience. So let's go into the puppet and see exactly how he did this. All right, so he's got all these costumes, and here's how he went about it. He's got his body group. Let's take a closer look at this. He's got his body group, and then he's got a group called dress. So if I turn dress off, it's going to be that naked version of himself, right? And then if I turn it back on, it will show this group with all these different things underneath it, all the different variations. And so if I turn these off, you'd be able to see exactly what was happening. So let's just do that really quick. Okay, so here's the punk costume or this costume or all that stuff. And all he did was, exactly like we showed before, trigger each of those with either in the Photoshop file, putting a number in parentheses, with the exclamation mark, or you could do it in here with the key triggers like we showed in Hide Siblings. And so this works great because you kind of have this overlay. The naked version is, kind of the body, and you see the hands, and you can add on the body group your sticks and your draggables and all that stuff like we've shown in other weeks in some of the other tutorials. But underneath it, you get all these layers that you can put on top of it. So you could have a bunch of different costumes and switch, between it for the character on the fly. Now he's doing the exact same thing as I was showing before, where multiple things are triggered by the same thing. So notice that some of these characters had hats associated with them, for example. So 2, switched kind of this uniform. And so he did the same thing up here where there's these hats in the, he just has this hat group, and then hats show up when he presses these keys. And some of these keys are the exact same keys as the costumes down here. So it's just one way to do that sort of thing. We have a couple comments coming in Twitch. Dan is saying, I've used Joystick Mapper on the Mac to get a PS4 controller to work wirelessly with CH. So that's one way to do it. Thanks, Dan. And then Dave is saying, tip, if the puppet panel gets too crowded, you can examine just a subtree by double-clicking on the layer group, and then Command or Control W to close and go back to the full view. So let's try that, for example. So here's the dress layer. So this is a pretty complicated character, right? There's a lot going on. But if I double-click it, it's going to go just into that dress area. And so I can see, just these elements and kind of work on these. So that's a nice shortcut. And if I press Command W, it sounds like it goes back. So nice little shortcut there. Good tip for kind of moving back and forth between these things. That's very helpful. Cool. So I thought this was really cool. So I was helping Italo with a few things. There were some warping issues, kind of the triggering that was going on. But overall, this was really cool. And he was really excited to get this working and be able to put it together. I think his girlfriend or his fiance actually did the drawings, and then he was putting them together and animating it. So it's great to see this sort of stuff happening out there in the community. Very cool. So thanks so much for putting that in. I appreciate it. All right, let's move on to this character. Where is Boney? So Lynne Mitchell has put in quite a few examples. I think she's had character example in every episode we've done so far. And this is one. So Lynne is a very skilled 3D artist, and so one of the things she's able to do is she created this character in 3D and then brought it in with each of the assets as a different layer in Photoshop. I'm just going to close Photoshop in the background here. But brought it in, and it's got some head turn associated with it. She even did the jaw kind of moving with the talking, and there's a bunch of keyboard triggers that I'll show as well. One thing I noticed when I brought this in was you notice that the eyes are kind of going weird just by its default, and that's because the eyes are looking for a blink or eyelids, and because they don't see them, they're just going to warp the eye and do this kind of weird thing as I blink. So I don't want that to happen. So the way to quickly fix that is to go down here to eyelid strength and make that go down to 0. And then bringing it back in, now when I blink, it's going to have absolutely no effect on this character because skeletons apparently don't have eyelids, right? So it should be pretty easy to move it around and not have to worry about that. So just to understand the eyes, I think we've mentioned this before, but either add eyelids, right eyelid top, right eyelid bottom, left eyelid top, left eyelid bottom as layer names, or you can add left and right blink. And if you do that, then Character Animator will look for that. So it's either looking for the lids to do a manual blink with your face, or it's going to look for the blink motion. By the way, I learned something the other day. How do you do? Is it tilde? Yeah. So the tilde symbol. Oh, that's scary. The tilde symbol, at least on a Mac, does this full screen view of your face tracking, so you can see exactly where all those dots are showing up at any given time. So I can see the blue dots on my eyes, the red dots around my face. So just a helpful thing, and I think you can do that for any window actually. Yeah. So just a helpful tip. I think that works in some other Adobe products as well. So just helpful if you're looking at something and want to just see it full screen without anything else. All right, so there were some interesting things that she's doing here, though, with the eyes. There's kind of this glassy look to them, and kind of some shadows, some shading that she's doing that's really cool. So let's look into this character. So I'm going to look at it, and again, I can get to the source file of any character by right-clicking, Reveal in Finder. That's going to bring it up, and then I can open it up in Photoshop. And while I'm looking at it in Photoshop, I'm just going to turn the camera and the webcam off, so it's a little bit easier to get a little bit better performance that way, if it's not trying to do a live sync. Okay, so in Photoshop, it's opening up, and what she did basically was create the skeleton, the skull, as kind of a over the top layer above the eyeballs, and then put the eyeballs underneath and added these several different shadow layers to make it almost like a sandwich of these different assets. So let's take a look at the head. She's got the different head groups, so I'm just going to look at front for now. So let's just isolate that. And let's see. So here we've got, so let's just zoom in on the head. All right, so we've got the head, and then let's look at all the different things that she has going on. So she's got these eyeballs. So she's got the pupil, the eyeball, and then a soft shadow layer. Here's another layer of shadows, an eye mask that's going over top, kind of this black background that's showing up as well, and then the mask over top of it. And so this, this skull layer just kind of goes over top of the eyeballs, and then you've got this, this really nice effect of the eyeballs kind of being behind the rest of the face. So you kind of got this faceplate thing happening, which is really cool. So it's a really cool effect. And then let's go back to here. I saw someone. Dave has also given another tip. He says that whoops, I don't want to get rid of that. Quit that. Go back to Character Animator. Dave is saying also Command or Control E to edit external, to open the Photoshop or Illustrator file directly with the puppet selected in the project. Oh, that's helpful. So let's just try that really quick. Command E, and that's going to open up Photoshop. Cool, it's opening in my other window, or it'll probably open up here. Let's see if that works. Looks like it did. Okay, so that's another shortcut, Command E or Control E. See, I'm learning stuff too as we go about this. This is great. This is helpful. Okay. All right, now Photoshop's going to try to load. Let's just quit out of that. Yeah. Okay. So Lynne did a bunch of cool things to this character. She actually did a bunch of different brows. For the top of the eyes. So I think if I press, 5, they kind of raise up. And again, this is just kind of putting another layer, a mask, over basically another faceplate over top of everything, to make it kind of give that arched eyebrows effect, which is nice. And then 6 does one eyebrow raised. Let's see, 7 does the other eyebrow. 8 does kind of this angry look. What's next? Not C. C does that. That's kind of cool. Kind of these squinting eyes. 9, just kind of the cheekbones or the bottom of the eyes kind of coming up. And then 1 does the head turn. 3 does the other head turn. G. So she has a lot of hand motions, and again, these were just rendered as just the hands, and then brought in to the character and added keyboard triggers. So we have G, Q, J, H, 0, P, X, S, just the kind of the fingers tapping there, N, V, U, and Y. So very cool, seeing that she's, I think that's, 15, 20 key triggers that she's added to this character. And it's really cool. It adds a nice, amount of life to it as you're, talking and moving around. You can imagine, I'm just kind of pressing random keys right now. Hope it doesn't break my computer, but, it gets this little nice expressiveness as you were, as you're talking. So very cool character, as always, Lynne. Very cool example of a 3D, bringing a 3D character into Character Animator. Cool. Let's see. So there's only really one other thing that I wanted to show, and that's let's get this guy back in here, Red Monster. So here's a kind of a more shaded version of Red Monster that I've got going on here, and you've probably seen this guy in the tutorial and whatnot. But one of the things, if you have an Illustrator file, you can add the wiggler behavior to it, and that will give it kind of this live sketch look that I remember from Comedy Central used to have that show Dr. Katz that had kind of this live sketchy look, and I've seen it in other videos as well. And this just kind of shows the power of what behaviors are. So we talked about cycle layers, we talked about keyboard triggers. There's some behaviors that are just included as part of Character Animator. And the idea is that in the future, there'll be hundreds of different behaviors to choose from to really personalize your character and do some stuff that might typically and traditionally be hard, pretty easy to do. And you kind of fine tune and choose the behaviors that you want to fit your character. So in this case, I added the wiggler behavior, which you can find. Let's just look at the character. Where's Red Monster? Here he is. Red monster is trying to load. Has my weird face in the background there. But I just added to the top level here. So I selected this top part in the character panel and then went to plus and wiggler under behaviors. And you can see all the different kind of default ones that show up here. So what that allows me to do, if it is vector artwork, so if this is coming in from an Illustrator file, and you want to make sure that you do not have, what is the property that you don't want checked? Render as artwork, right? And I'm trying to find where that is, but I can't find it right now. Oh, you need to select a layer. That's right. So there's this thing called skin, render as image. You don't want that checked, okay? You want to make sure, because render as image is going to, that's kind of the, let's rasterize all this vector stuff, and that's kind of the cheat way to get, to get some of this stuff to work. But if you can make a character without using any of the blend modes or other stuff that aren't currently supported with the transition to character animator, then you can get this wiggler effect. So you need to select what we call a skin layer. So just a regular art layer within your puppet, and then let's turn up the wiggler effect. And so now I've kind of got this wiggle effect on the character, as it's talking and moving around. It looks pretty cool. And then I also did the same to the background, so I can turn that up as well. And so this is really cool. So I feel like this is a nice look for, like, you can imagine a children's story or something like that. It would be helpful to do this sort of thing. It kind of gives it a fun, different look. And you can imagine in the future, these sort of things, like, could this be done for a shader? Could this be done to all sorts of different line quality and styles that could be added on top of your character? So it's just a nice way to kind of make things pop to life and feel a little vibrant and give you that sort of ability within Character Animator. And it's really cool that you can do this stuff on the fly live. So I just turned it off, so now he's not moving, and the background's kind of earthquaking, but I can turn it all the way up pretty high, and now it's going all over the place. Let's bring it down a little bit. So there we go. Couple notes. Dave saying, for future reference, render as image will be default on starting in Preview 4. So we haven't announced when Preview 4 is coming out, but we've been working very hard on it. And in the future, yes, that's going to be the default for any artwork coming in. That'll be checked off. And Redefinery is saying it'll also be easier to access. It'll be available from the puppet itself as opposed to needing to do that little skin layer thing. So in the immediate future, you'll have to do what I was just showing you, but down the road, it'll be a little bit easier to do as well. Cool. So that's really all I had today. I thought the biggest thing for me was just that expressiveness stuff. That's the latest and greatest, newest thing I thought was interesting. So that's really what I wanted to show. I think I did a couple trips last week. Was it last week? Yeah, to Los Angeles and to South by Southwest, and talked to some animators there, some friends, and was just really inspired. And so I've been trying to learn a lot more about how to do this sort of stuff and kind of get these more traditional, frame by frame things that you can do with animation into Character Animator, into my characters. And I think the results are looking really cool. I'm really excited about doing this sort of stuff moving forward. So I hope that's helpful to you guys as well. So I think that's it. Unless there's any last minute questions in the chat room, we'll call it a day. Feel free, if you have questions, when you go to the welcome panel here in Character Animator, you can, as always, go to the feedback forum. That's where everyone in the team looks at that on a daily basis, and we answer a lot of questions there. So if you're running into a problem with a puppet, something not working right, you have a question, you have a feature you want to request, that's the best place to go and do it. So definitely do that. We've also got all our video tutorials as well as archived versions of this live show available in this video tutorial section. So that's very helpful. So if you have artwork or puppets that you'd like us to feature on a future show, please feel free to post it either in those forums that I mentioned, or you can tweet it to me at OKSamurai, OKAYSAMURAI, on Twitter, and that's one way to help out. SFolden85 is saying, thanks, I always learn a lot from you. Well, thank you for joining. It's great to have a lively chat today. People asking questions and a lot of interaction, which is the whole reason for these kind of live shows. So Perfect. All right, so I guess we're going to call it a day then. Thank you guys so much for watching, and can't wait to see what you guys make. Bye.